In today's JJDL Draft League split, it's time to have an uncomfortable conversation about Terapagos in Draft League. When I was making this tier list, I really thought that Terapagos was going to be a really powerful Pokemon in this metagame. It was going to be one of the metagame defining Pokemon based on its ability to be a very efficient setup sweeper, has a lot of things going for it with its multi-scale like ability and all the various setup opportunities that it has. It's a stealth rocker, it's a rapid spinner. But that's just not the case. It has just not been the Pokemon I have been looking for this entire season. It's just really not been what, it just hasn't been good enough, unfortunately. So we're going to cover that in the games today. We got 3 games for you in today's JJDL video. So if you're excited for that, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you have not already. We are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers this year. Every subscription helps a ton along that journey. The channel's been doing really good the last couple of months. I really appreciate all of the love and support that you have all brought to the channel. But let's get right into week number 4 then of the JJDL. We are currently 3-0 in the JJDL, on a bit of a roll going into this week, so really want to keep that momentum up. We're playing against Ducky here. This is the team that he brought on the other side. He's got Gliscor, Samurott, Azumarill, Gholdengo, Muk, and Cyclizar. So some of the Pokemon that Ducky has left on the bench include Mew, which is kind of interesting, but I see why Mew can get really targeted by the Greninja. For example, it has to run moves for Lando T. There's a lot of things going wrong for Mew here in this matchup. My opponent has their own Ogerpon, which is kind of interesting, but Arcanine kind of deals with that Pokemon. They have a Raikou, I have Raging Bolt, and a Lando. So Raikou, difficult to really make progress. And then Masquerain and Torracat, which are not bringable Pokemon, to say the least, unfortunately. But that's kind of the thing with draft. You draft these kind of Pokemon at the end of the draft that don't really bring the most value at all. So you're not going to see them very often. But let's get into the team that I brought this week. I have a Silk Scarf, Terapagos CM, Rock Polish, Terra Starstorm, and Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse is just a way to break through the Gholdengo. So the idea is to kind of lead this Pokemon, this Terapagos, just kind of set up, get some damage going, push through and open up some HP on my opponent's team to win with the Battle Bond Greninja I have on my team. Surf, Dark Pulse, Grass Knot, Ice Beam. This is going to have a lot. This is really potent. Once that Muk is really whittled down, my opponent does not have a good way to beat this Pokemon. Now, they could be Sapsip or Azumarill. That's very much a possibility with the Ogerpon in this matchup. So if that is the case, we're going to have to break it down with the Raging Bolt and the Terapagos throughout this game. So something to keep in mind that can also prevent this Greninja from winning. We have a generic Assault Vest, a Raging Bolt. AV Raging Bolt is just like another option against the, the Gholdengo. Decent against Mew as well. Then can put decent offensive pressure on my opponent's team with Draco Meteor and the like. We have Wish, Encore, Dazzling Gleam, Ice Beam, Screamtail. I mean, kind of a boring set, to be honest. Ice Beam is for Gliscor here, so we got a lot of speed EVs to make sure we're always outpacing any Gliscor set if it wants to be some sort of Swords Dance set. That could be very scary in this matchup, especially where I don't have a Landorus T on my team. I have just a generic boot spiking Ogerpon. Spikes are really powerful in this matchup against my opponent's team. It forces a lot of Cyclizar Rapid Spin turns, which is really good. And then I just have a generic defensive Arcanine set, which I've been running pretty consistently this entire season as a way to manage Pokemon that didn't come, like the Ogerpon and even the Mew to a certain extent. But it allows some utility against Cyclizar here. So let's get right into the battle against Ducky. And as I said, we're going to lead off with that Terapagos. Terapagos is going to try to use that Calm Mind Rock Polish set and leverage its Terra Shell to start really just setting up and putting pressure on my opponent's team. They're going to go right into Gholdengo as I get a Calm Mind up. And now with the Calm Mind up, it's going to be really difficult for Gholdengo to break through this Pokemon. You see it's a 2-hit KO here for that to kill. And at +1, 41%. We still have full HP. We've really chipped down that Gholdengo. And now my opponent's in a pretty problematic spot, honestly, here. They make a pretty hard read to go into the Samurott. I could have maybe Terra Starstorm there. Very risky play to go for something like that. And then the Sacred Sword picks it off. So, I mean, there was kind of a vision here that could have worked with this Terapagos. But this is kind of one of the issues I've been running into building with Terapagos in these situations is, a lot of fighting types are very common in this metagame. And this obviously wasn't a fighting type per se, but that is one of the common things that you'll notice in this metagame is fighting types are very prevalent and very overrepresented in kind of the top of the metagame. And that makes it really kind of a harsh environment for Terapagos to thrive in. And then a lot of things just get random fighting coverage, like this Samurott, for example, gets Sacred Sword. And even though I have a lot of HP in this thing, it's just gonna die every time. Now, this might have been a roll. I feel like it could have been, but I think it was always in my opponent's favor. So it's just one of those things where Terapagos, there's some interesting things it can do, but it requires too many turns to set up, doesn't have reliable recovery, and kind of doesn't bring a lot of value all the time. But we do get a free knockoff here, which is really, really good as he goes into the Cyclizar. So Cyclizar, to get some hazard removal, is going to have to start taking some spikes to get that hazard removal. So really happy with that. We take a Body Slam, no para, which is really nice, and we're able to get Screamtail in. A little bit passive, of course, but this is just a good opportunity to get a Wish up and allow me to get a really aggressive switch into one of my other Pokemon, and that's going to be the Raging Bolt at this junction. Now, this is where I think my first kind of misplay of the game came in. I was really debating going for Draco Meteor. There's no real reason to ever stand with Goldango here, and Draco is super free against my opponent's team. If they go into this Gliscor, the Gliscor is super neutralized the rest of the game. They have to spend a turn protecting, basically, to get a little bit of HP and to go out. That gives me a free switch into the Greninja, and I either get my Battle Bond off, which is not great, but I probably just go hard Screamtail in that sense, and then I continue to pressure this, and this thing becomes neutralized the rest of the game. Becomes an easy Battle Bond target in the mid game, and just kind of an unfortunate play I wish I would have made in that spot. And now Gliscor really just has kind of the power to take over this game, get a free Toxic on this turn into Screamtail, which is super frustrating. I go for the Ice Beam, do about half health, but I get a knockoff, I lose my boots. And now we're just super, super far behind in this game. They're going to go into Azumarill here. I go for the Wish. And I have to go Ogerpon here. I have to hope that it's some sort of not Sapser percent. I just have to basically sack that Pokemon off. And I'm just super far behind here. At this point, I get a Discharge off. No para, which is a little bit unfortunate. They're going to get a Recover off. And I go for the Draco this turn, and they stay in. So at this point, basically everything I'm doing, nothing is working out for me. I'm just making bad play after bad play, allowing my opponent to really get into some good advantage here. And I haven't even damaged the Muck. And, this is one of the big Pokemon I need to remove to enable my Battle Ball and Greninja. Because while this game's not going well, I mean, look at my opponent's team with Battle Ball and Greninja. Cyclizar is going to die to Ice Beam. Azumarill's going to get Grass Knotted. We, at this point, assume it's huge power, so we probably need a little bit more chip there. Samurott's in range, Gliscor's in range, Goldango's in range. Like, the team is in range, but because the fact that we've lost two Pokemon early and we've been on the back foot, we haven't really been able to force Pokemon like a Muk to come in or something like a Azumarill to come in to actually take damage. So, in a little bit of an awkward position, they go for the Poison Jab here, get the Poison too, which is just kind of adds insult to injury, and especially here going into Gliscor, because of the fact that I'm poisoned, I have to go for a Morning Sun to even keep this thing as a relevant answer late into the game, and I can go into Screamtail now. Being superly defensive, I'm able to live that, and able to get an Ice Beam off here, which is not the end of the world. That is nice chip, but unfortunately for Greninja Calcs, this doesn't really matter at all at the end of the day. Go for an Ice Beam here, get a little bit of chip. This thing is starting to get whittled down. They reveal Drain Punch though, which is super frustrating. I'm kind of running out of options at this point. I make a nice little double here into Greninja, catch that Gliscor, and this is kind of how I really have to get this Muk chipped out, is make some aggressive doubles here. I get a Surf, you see it's doing 23%. Like, this is just not enough to really make progress in this game. The Drain Punches are free here, especially against my Arcanine. My opponent does go into Azumarill here as I Flare Blitz, and I do get the burn, so this, and they do reveal Lumberry, unfortunately enough. So this is actually relevant chip now at this point. Surprised it didn't go into Gliscor on this one. I think predicting the Greninja, and kind of playing a mid-ground double or switch in there to go into Azumarill. Covers the Greninja and covers me staying in. But the burn, very, very good for me, but the Lumberry kind of saves it. And now, at this point, I just have to try to make progress here. This is another turn. I maybe should have dropped a Draco here. But at this point, I'm just super, super far behind, and there's not really much I can do. I go hard Greninja here, see if I can catch him, maybe setting up a late game spike. The damage actually doesn't really matter here too much. And I go for the Ice Beam. I should have just gone for the Surf there, I think. Surf into Surf had a chance with the crit. If I got a crit in the first one, it opened a chance to get it to a KO there, which would have been nice. And I finally get the Draco and the Gliscor, but at this point, you kind of, the writing's on the wall. We're running out of turns very, very quickly to actually be able to make, actually win this game. And then we're just going to lose our Gliscor. So at this point still, though, like, Greninja is still able to win this game with Battle Bond. We need some good calcs on Azumarill and Samurott, but it's not over till it's over. This thing is still potentially in range, and this is maybe why I should have surfed. And I missed the roll. I get a low roll into a mid roll, and I don't get the kill here, and I get 6-0'd in week 4. If I get that kill, man, I think I have a decent chance to actually win that game. The burn on Azumarill would have been nice, and I probably still end up losing to the Azu, depending on what set it is. But really, a 6-0 that, if I get, 2 mid rolls, there's a few more kills coming my way. So I think, one, I'm really not happy with how I played overall. Really, disappointed in that, even though I gave myself a chance to win at the end. But that is what it is. That is week 4. We're currently 3-1. Our team, though, as I'll kind of touch on over the next couple of games, we've been doing very, very well, and we're very solidly at this point in first place right now. So the season overall for the team is going well, partially due to our record. But let's get right into game 2 now. So week 5, we're playing against Bleedle. He has got a very, very strong team here. He's got the Great Tusk, the Ogerpon Hearthflame, the Manaphy, King Gambit, Thundurus, and Ribombee. So he's brought his top 6, very, very powerful Pokemon. The Pokemon he's left on the bench include Bronzong, which may be good here, but really taken advantage of by stuff like the Greninja and the Arcanine, so it makes sense why he didn't bring it. He has Regidrago, a Pokemon that I love. I will forever praise Regidrago for what it did in our LTM low-tier team. But I got a Screamtail here, so it's really hard to justify Regidrago in almost any case here. And he's got a Dachshund, which, look, I've seen Dachshund win a BBR playoff game before, so that Pokemon's got some bag, but I got an Arcanine, so it's not really going to happen in today's battle. But, a little bit of a top 6 angle, a lot of very powerful Pokemon here. Great Tusk, Manaphy, Ogerpon Hearthflame, King Gambit, so much offense, so much power here in this matchup. And this game, on the theme of Terapagos, we're actually going to be able to get decent value out of it, I think, in this game. Let's get into the team that we brought. We brought another Calm Mind Rock Polish Terapagos set here, this time with Flamethrower as our coverage. Flamethrower is nice here to cover the King Gambit specifically. We could have run Aura Sphere for that as well, but that also gives us a move for Bronzong, which is nice, just to have access to that. It also deals super effective Ribombee. I guess, it doesn't really matter too much in that sense. They could get aggressive with Ribombee on Aura Sphere turns. Flamethrower kind of covers that. It's just kind of a slightly better coverage move in this specific spot. We have to really be mindful to just damage this before we really leverage our Terapagos anyway. We have Boots, Protean, Greninja this week. Just generic stabs and then Ice Beam. Ice Beam is nice to cover both the Great Tusk and the Thundurus as just a mid-ground play. Ice Beam obviously then good against Regidrago as well. Big in that specific instance. We have Magnet, Raging Bolt. Electric coverage is really, really good this week against my opponent's team. They have a lot of difficulty switching into that outside of the Great Tusk, which I have decent switch-ins to with my Screamtail, which we're going to get into in a second. And if we get an aggressive Draco Meteor off on that Pokemon, we're in a good spot to really just remove that Pokemon from the game and then just start spamming Volt Switches and Discharges against my opponent's team. I'm actually Thunderbolt this week, so pretend I didn't say Draco Meteor. We're bringing Rocky Helmet, Screamtail. So the last time I played against a Great Tusk was who did I play against? Was it against Matthew? Yeah, I was against Matthew in the BBR, and I ran basically the same set. Or did I run this? I ran this set somewhere. I think it might have been BBR. I played so many Draft League games recently that I don't remember what sets I'm running where. But this is my rocker for the week as well. Rocks are super, super crucial here in this matchup. Ogerpon Hearthflame just completely neutralized by rocks. Thunderous, if it's not Boots, gets completely neutralized by rocks. Then Rabombi obviously breaks any Focus Sash shenanigans that Pokemon might be up to. And then we have Dazzling Gleam, just generic damage for the Great Tusk. But the idea of this set basically is Rocky Helmet and Dazzling Gleam just removes this Pokemon from being a threat entirely. And while we might have to trade off our entire Screamtail to do that, by doing that, we just remove that Pokemon from the game. Essentially, it's able to be revenge killed by anything. We have just like generic Boots, kind of like same idea as Greninja. Ogerpon is like pretty good in this matchup. It's a way to check the Manaphy, which is super, super important in this matchup. If it starts tail glowing, we need just a way to come in and kill that immediately if we have to sack something. And then very standard Arcanine. We're justified again this week because he does have Kingambit, so that set that worked oh so well for us in the first video of the JJDL. It's back. It's such a really good set to manage Kingambit, so let's get right into the battle. My opponent leads off the Rabombi. I lead off Raging Bolt. This is kind of like the only situation where it's really difficult to make an initial click. I decided to go for the Volt Switch because if they stay in to get up Sticky Webs and I'm able to break any Focus Sash, if they go Great Tusk, I have my Screamtail here that I can go into early and just like start playing this game of getting those defenses dropped, getting some chip on that Pokemon, and they're just going to go right into Thunderous here, and I get up my Stealth Rock. Super important here. Need to force them to go back into that Great Tusk again to remove these rocks, and that lowers their opportunities to use Ogerpon Hearthflame and Thunderous in this battle. I go hard here into Terapagos, kind of expecting either like a Volt Switch or something. They go for the Taunt. I was expecting a Sludge Wave, actually a Sludge Wave here, more realistically. And I can take that, and they're in a really bad spot to actually switch into this. They can go into Kingambit and take early chip on this Pokemon if they want to, by all means. And the fact that they Taunt is really nice, so I'm able to kind of live this with the Terra Shell, and they're going to go into the Great Tusk here, which is really interesting. I go for the Flamethrower, hoping for a burn. Flamethrower there. I really expected something like Kingambit to come in and catch the Terra Starstorm. If I, Terra Starstorm in that Great Tusk, that would be a great turn. But alas, they're just going to go in, get those rocks up, and they're really losing damage here on that Great Tusk. That's almost basically in range of Draco Meteor. Yeah, it's basically almost in range of Draco Meteor now from Raging Bolt, which is nice. So I go for the Wish. I expect another Taunt here to come out to prevent Stealth Rocks from getting back up, because as I said, Stealth Rocks are super crucial against this team. Staying in and Dazzling Gleam just like gets a little bit of chip, helps make turns with Greninja just that little bit easier. Allows me to maybe use Arcanine to kill this in the late game, and I get back up to full HP, which is super, super important. And then I take the opportunity to go into Terapagos to eat the Sludge Wave. The fact that they didn't Focus Blast the last time makes me believe that they don't have Focus Blast this time. And I go for the Terra Starstorm here, kind of expecting that they probably don't want to go Kingambit again with my first turn, and my first option for this being Flamethrower. And they decide to just go into Ogerpon to get really aggressive to eat that Flamethrower. And now at this point, I have Arcanine at this point that I can go into, but if they set up a Swords Dance here, then I'm in a really bad spot against Stomping Tantrum. And if they just attack, at this point the value that I'm getting from Terapagos is really difficult, because there's nothing I can really switch in on anymore that this can actually take a hit and attack back. So at this point, I think my best play is to sack the Terapagos. It's kind of, without recovery, it's really difficult to really leverage its ability in this specific spot. Now, I could have ran recovery onto this. I mean, it gets rest. Does it get any? I don't think it gets any other type of recovery. No, it does not. So, that's kind of one of the things you have to be mindful of this. So I decided, I'm not going to get any more value out of this. My value for this Pokemon is not getting Swords Dance on. My opponent clicks the Swords Dance and I Terra Starstorm and kill it. So my value of Terapagos here was really, really good in that I've just neutralized one of my opponent's biggest threats here. And now Stealth Rocks, while important, are not going to be something I have to really prioritize in this battle, because Thunderous looks to just be a really middling set here, so I'm not super concerned about that Pokemon, to say the least, at this point. And I'm able to get a lot of value out of this Pokemon. So now they can come into something like the Rabombi, Revenge Kill, but I've dealt with their biggest threats. So unfortunately not the value I was looking to get out of Terapagos here in this battle, but certainly happy with its contribution in this battle. But you can kind of see what I'm saying in these battles and what it's doing. This is not a first overall pick, a first round pick by any means. It's definitely not 18 points. I think 15 is probably where it's going to end up kind of finding a home over the next couple of leagues as we kind of finish off the cycle of Gen 9. I think it's going to kind of find its niche there as kind of a second round pick. It's got a lot of utility, to say the least, but I'm very thankful I have Greninja, a true round 1 pick. The focus of the last video, this Pokemon has been kind of a game changer and a game saver, honestly, for this team. So going to Arcanine here, I go for the Will-O-Wisp here and miss. And the reason I go for Willow here is I think one of the things that's going to be really important to enable this Greninja endgame is to keep this Manaphy as low as humanly possible. And then Will-O-Wisp, just as a click, is super powerful against everything my opponent's can go into here. The only thing they go into is Manaphy. And as I said, if it's a setup set without leftovers, then it's in real trouble here the rest of the game. Now I get a really aggressive here. I don't have Encore. Oh, I do have Encore on this, but I kind of figure Screamtail's a little passive. I can start to, maybe get put into a little bit of a blender on some situations. I also want to keep this thing at decent HP for Great Tusk still, given the type of set Great Tusk is. So I'm like, let's get aggressive here. Maybe, he probably scalds, but, let's just dodge a burn. And I don't dodge the burn, unfortunately. So this makes it a little bit trickier to actually check that Pokemon. We do still scare it out, and the Ivy Cudgel is still going to do a lot of damage, but unfortunately that's going to be a little bit crippled the rest of the game. But we get a great setup turn here for our Raging Bolt. We can go for the Volt Switch here. Volt Switch is just unreal in this position. They go Great Tusk, and they basically have to lose the rest of their Great Tusk to the Screamtail. They go for the Taunt to prevent this from CM setting up all over them, which makes perfect sense to go for that. But the Volt Switch is just going to kill the Thundurus, and now we are in a great spot, honestly, the rest of this battle to kind of figure it out. So I go Ogerpon here. Ogerpon, really the only thing that they go into with Ogerpon here is something like the Ribombee or the Kingambit. Both of those Pokemon just invite in Arcanine for free and give me a really simple path to play these next couple of turns. The Bug Buzz, I mean, that's not great damage, but that's still damage. And I go for another Willow, and I miss again. Oh my god. That it's just starting to be really unfortunate here that I keep missing those. And I have to go back into Ogerpon again. They catch me with an Ice Beam, which is super frustrating. I could have gone Raging Bolt, but if I go Ice Beam into Ice Beam, and they got a hot, the calcs could be dangerous in that specific situation. So I want to go this just to be as safe as possible. They're going to go Ribombee here. I just go for the Ivy Cudgel, just trying to maximize the damage that I can on this Pokemon. I could have U-turned to save it, but I have to sack now a Pokemon to get this back in on Manaphy, and I can just go into Ribombee or Kingambit again. So the way I look at it, I either break the Sash on this, they go Kingambit, and I get a free turn. Either way, I get a free turn with Arcanine because they can't go Great Tusk. And now I make a pretty aggressive double as they go for the U-turn here. A pretty safe U-turn. I don't think they had revealed it up to that point. Let me check. They had revealed it up to that point, actually. So maybe not the soundest of doubles, but this gives me a decent position as it forces them to go Great Tusk, and I get a really easy Screamtail turn here to kind of put some pressure. And we're kind of in a little bit of a switching game here because they can go into the Kingambit, but my Arcanine is just going to be able to kind of wall that off. And I finally get the burn on this Manaphy. Super important that I start putting just a little bit of pressure on this thing's HP because it does have the leftovers, which is super annoying. But I just need something to go right to get that thing into kind of a range that I can manage it with Greninja. Now I'm able to get a Wish up here and get into my Arcanine. And this is kind of the play pattern we saw in week number 1 where Justified Arcanine. Super powerful here. You see that Flare Blitz, 32%. I mean, that's not a lot. That's like a 4-hit KO. But we're able to, start to put pressure on that Manaphy's HP. We don't know what it could be yet. We see a Scald Burn here. It could be Rest Rain Dance, but that's kind of not a great way to break through stuff like Screamtail. Kind of just gets neutralized from there. We throw up another Wish here. And at this point, we're just trying to position ourselves the best way we possibly can to kind of open up our Greninja end game. So we are Protean, but given the HP these things are at, we just need to pick our spots, and we need to kill basically one of these Pokemon, whether it be the Manaphy or the Great Tusk. Arcanine endgame is really good into Ribombee and the Kingambit as well. So there are a lot of paths to victory here, but they're very difficult to get to. I get a big double here on the Raging Bolt onto the Manaphy here, as I kind of expect that double to come every time. and this forces a really tough decision for my opponent. I've gone electric move every time, and I go for it again because I still have enough HP on Screamtail to get some value here, as they're going to go for a double here, taking advantage of that. But they go for the trick here. Give me the choice specs, which could be interesting. I do have Dazzling Gleam here, which could do a decent amount of damage to something like the Manaphy if the situation arises. And I just stand to Wish on the choice specs just to get this thing back to at least high enough HP that I can still do something to this Great Tusk if need be. They go for a good double here into Manaphy here, as I'm going to have to go back into Screamtail to eat this Scald. And we're kind of in like a really aggressive switching game here, trying to figure out how like we can best position our turns here. I just go for the Dazzling Gleam, try to maximize damage here on these next couple of turns. That's, I think, going to be my best avenue to victory. They go into a Ribombee here, so I catch them. I get a good turn here. I get a good Flare Blitz here into the Manaphy, which is going to be super crucial. I do have E-Speed, so the more we chip it, the more we put it in range of E-Speed, which is nice, but we're not there yet. We still have a little bit of a ways to go to really open up this game. We're really trying to get to a point, as I said, where we either checkmate them with the Arcanine or the Greninja. They're really losing HP on this Manaphy. They've lost some HP on King Gamut. The Great Tusk is in range. And we're just going to sack off the Screamtail here. And at this point, I just go for the Draco Meteor. I've gone for the electric move every single time in this spot. And they've gone to this every single time. I don't have Screamtail anymore to manage this. I figure that this is the time they're going to go into it 100%. And I'm going to catch it because I need to catch that Pokemon. The crit doesn't really matter at this point, and that is a huge turning point for the game. That basically puts this game at checkmate here, because I can go right into the Arcanine. They can U-turn into the Manaphy, but at this point, this thing is starting to get so whittled down that I can just go into Greninja, save my Raging Bolt. I have to not get, I guess I have to not get frozen there, which is kind of a thing to keep mindful of, but Arcanine checkmate is pretty likely at this point, given the HP everything is at. They go into King Gambit here. I get a powerful U-turn off, and this is at this point basically checkmate for Arcanine. They have no way to switch into this. They can go into Manaphy, but Flare Blitz plus the extreme speed is going to be able to kill this Pokemon. As I said, this is kind of what we were working to. This entire endgame was setting up a situation where either the Greninja or the Arcanine put them in checkmate. Arcanine puts Bleedle into checkmate here. And that is a big, big win in week number 5 of the JJDL to go 4-1 on the season so far. Just keeping up momentum. We've had great momentum in this kind of split of Draft League with BBR and JJDL. It's been going super well. But we got one more game here before we end off the video. On our final game of the second split of the JJDL, we have one more after this, 9 games in the regular season, and then we start to get into playoffs. My team, as I said, we're in first place right now, and if we make it to first place, we're actually probably off for a couple of weeks for the team playoffs, because we would have a bye in the first and second round of playoffs. I will let you guys know all of the details for that in the next JJDL video, which will drop in about 2 to 3 weeks. What the next schedules of videos are. I might just do one video with all of the playoff games at the very end. But this game, we're playing against Wind. He's got an interesting team. He's got a really good Sand Core here. So you don't see a Tyranitar on the team. That's the first Pokemon that he's benched. After Iron Boulder, we got an Iron Boulder on this team. You know it's a John Jr. League. You know someone's going to have an Iron Boulder on their team. They elect not to bring it, interestingly enough, in this battle. I see kind of the merit to it. I have a Landorus T, which kind of just shuts it down completely. And they've got a lot of really powerful threats on this team, which can take advantage of Lando. So understand why they don't have that. Then they don't have T-Tar as well. So not going for the sand aspect, once again, makes sense with the Landorus on my team. And then they have Tatsugiri and Numel, which are not Pokemon that exist. So pretend those aren't on the team. What my opponent has brought, they brought Ogerpon Wellspring. I don't know what it is about my drafts, but my drafts are just super weak to Ogerpon Wellspring all of the time. I do have my own Ogerpon, which actually does well against it, but a few too many U-turns and that Pokemon's basically dead too. So good at shutting down the Swords Dance set, not so good at shutting down the Momentum sets. Enamorus here is pretty decent. I do have Screamtail, which walls it to a pretty good degree, and I do have Registeel, so something like Physical might make sense there, but especially with Superpower giving you plus defense on the contrary, you're not taking like 1,000,000 damage from Heavy Slam though. You're not taking the damage. We still see the Extra Drill here, even though we do have a Landorus, because Extra Drill, probably Choice Scarf in this sense, is going to be really just powerful against, my entire team. Gives them a check to Greninja, which is going to be super important. Because Ogerpon, obviously can't check Greninja because it has no ability to access an item, and it does not want to be taking those U-turns. Como is kind of interesting here. I do have the Scream Tail, which should be able to stop most of what this thing wants to do, and deal massive damage with the Fairy attack to prevent most setup sets. Rotom Heat, obviously very good against Ogerpon and decent against stuff like the Landorus as well. So, good Pokemon to kind of deal with my defensive core. And then the Decidueye is kind of interesting, probably just a way to come in and eat Earthquakes from the Landorus if they're scared of offensive Landorus Stone Edge in this battle. Let's talk about the team that I brought this week. We brought another Rock Polish Calm Mind Terapagos. Will Terapagos do something in this battle? It did basically nothing in the first battle. It traded in the second battle. Is this Pokemon going to do anything in this battle? Let's see. I have Earth Power as my coverage move this week. The main reason I have Earth Power as my coverage move is it hits T-Tar, it hits Excadrill. That's basically a Terra Star Storm hits the rest, which is all that matters. We have Protean Greninja here. I have 3 coverage moves, Surf, Dark Pulse, and Gunk Shot. Gunk Shot really, really important for the Enamorus. And then Spikes is really good against this team, actually. It puts a lot of offensive pressure on kind of his stuff like the Ogerpon Wellspring and the Como, which will be important for certain calcs. What else do we have? We have Landorus with Rocky Helmet. Rocky Helmet just gives me a way to pressure something like the Decidueye and the Excadrill. Super important there. And it also gives me a Rocker this week. The Rocky Helmet, as I said, is going to be super important for the Excadrill specifically to chip that down into range of my various threats. We have Bulk Up Screamtail this week. This is who suggested this in chat. Let me make sure I get the right credit for this. Kalais. This is a Kalais suggestion. Good suggestion by Kalais to run Bulk Up Screamtail. This is actually a pretty good set this week. Really good into stuff like Como. Really good into the Enamorus. Can kind of get picked off by Excadrill, but we have a lot of good ways to manage Excadrill in this matchup. So definitely a little bit of an end game play there if need be. We have Encore as well, just to kind of lock down any random nonsense from Como and stuff like that. We have just a standard heavy duty boots Raging Bolt with kind of all of the standard move sets here. Discharge this week because paralyzing things is going to be super important on like the Decidueye and the Como that might try to get aggressive. I guess Como can never get aggressive into this. Basically the Decidueye. If we pair the Decidueye, that's going to really just help out this game. But mainly the main move here to click is Draco Meteor against this team because Enamorus can't switch in. I mean, it could. You could switch in Enamorus, I guess, in theory, but that's probably not going to come up too often. And then we have very defensive Ogerpon to manage Swords Dance Ogerpon Wellspring. So that's going to be very, very important to manage that Pokemon this week. So yeah, let's get right into the battle. So my opponent elects to lead with the Rotom Heat. We lead with our Ogerpon. Ogerpon lead is really nice here, mainly because of the fact let's not skip too many turns here. Ogerpon lead's really nice because it leads well into their own Ogerpon, which I want to make sure to deter Spikes as much as possible here. They lead with their Rotom Heat, and Rotom Heat's a free turn for my Raging Bolt to come in and click a Draco Meteor. They lose almost all of their HP on the Rotom Heat early. Volt switching for minimum damage, so I've got a lot of speed on this Raging Bolt, 144 speed, which really clutch in that specific instance right there to get that damage off before they get a Volt Switch off. As it looks like their intention was to Volt Switch, before me and then go into this, which, hey, a really aggressive play, but it would have worked out for them. But I was faster, so crucial play there for me. They go for the Ironhead here. That does a lot of damage, and they get a flinch, which is not great. But after that sub, they reveal to be physical, which means Landorus actually is going to be able to wall this this Pokemon. As they go Ironhead, it's going to crit and do 30%, which is not great. But they're just going to hard switch out, I guess, just like fearing, just not wanting to take a bunch of like Rocky Helmet chip to like break through this and not take advantage of the sub. So that makes sense. I missed Stone Edge here, which is unfortunate, but I know I outspeed this because of the Raging Bolt speed situation. So good to just go for the second Stone Edge and kill it. If I miss the second Stone Edge and I get burned, I mean, I just missed the second Stone Edge at that point. Like, there's not much you can do to play around a situation like that. And this is kind of what I was referring to here with U-turn Ogerpon being so good in this spot, because now they get in their Excadrill for free, and Excadrill threatens us with X-Scissor every time. And I can't obviously stay in because this is super important. And they're able to get in the Komo on the Landorus. So they reveal Adrenaline Orb, so really, really good pre-planned sequence there from my opponent to set up a Ogerpon, a U-turn on the Ogerpon into Excadrill, bait out the Landorus, get that Adrenaline Orb off, and then Clangorous Soul, put them at +2 speed, get those special attack and defense raises. And I'm in a little bit of trouble. I can live the first Flash Cannon, which is nice, and get a Play Rough off, put that at 10%. But I'm going to have to sack off my, what is it called? My thing at this point, the Screamtail to the Komo at this point. And now I'm going to have to bring in Terapagos. And while, this is the theme of the video of Terapagos kind of being a little bit of a fraud, the Terra Shell ability actually does come through a little bit here. Now, I would have been able to live without it, but that allows me to kind of keep this Pokemon at high HP, at 70% and trade off for a potentially very, very threatening Pokemon here. So, honestly, decent value here, and we're going to just stay in here. We can't let this set up, similar Ogerpon situation to the Hearthflame Ogerpon from the previous game. We really don't want this to set up. And if we go for a Terra Starstorm, we can at least pressure that. Now, they just go with Decidueye as we go into Ogerpon, so not the best in the world. And we've lost even more HP on this Pokemon, which is not great. So, Terapagos providing some value, but as I said, this is not the value you would expect out of an 18-point Pokemon or a first-round Pokemon by any stretch of the imagination. At this point, I'm just going to go once again back into the Landorus. Landorus has taken a lot of HP, but we're starting to get some chip on that Excadrill. And Excadrill, the chip is important on that a little bit. It opens up some, not Dark Pulse, it opens up some Dark Pulse kills that don't really matter. It's mainly Surf, it's not always a kill. At least with the specific set I brought, I think. Actually, no, I don't think that actually matters. But chip is nice for something like Ogerpon, actually. Depending on the situation we get in, we can kill with Ivy Cudgel at a little bit over half HP. So here we threaten this with a knockoff. We're able to synth up here on the Decidueye, which is really, really nice. We need to keep this thing at high HP to manage the Ogerpon to the best of our abilities. We eat another U-turn here, which is not great as they go into Ogerpon. I'm going to have to sack off the Terapagos at this point to preserve the HP on the Ogerpon. They go right into the, what is it called? The Enamorus, and they get a superpower off, which is not great. I didn't really have another option I could have done there. I could have gone to Landorus, but I need a Landorus HP to be as high as possible to keep Excadrill Ironhead at bay in the late game. So not great. They go for the superpower. I'm able to go into Greninja here. So Greninja Battle Bond is going to be able to kill this, and I turn into a poison type, which is actually very difficult for this set to actually damage me, because if their last move is Play Rough, which should be given the set, they're not able to actually damage a poison type at all. Even though Greninja is very, very weak defensively. So I just go for the Gunk Shot. Gunk Shot's a great click here, even despite that they stay in, I have a good chance to kill anyway. And the only thing they can go to is Excadrill, but Ice Beam is such a free click there as well, because Ice Beam hits the Enamorus, hits the Excadrill, and the Decidueye. Also does good damage to Ogerpon. Like, Ice Punch was just a super obvious click there if I had it. Now I don't though, so that's why we're not clicking it in this spot. I go here to the Landorus on the Excadrill. They get that with an Iron Head, a little bit of Rocky Helmet chip. I decide to stay in. I figure like I clicked Rocks here, which was an unbelievably bad play. If they were ever, I was trying to protect against, get the Rocks up to like put pressure on the Enamorus. It just doesn't make sense as a play. If I'm staying in, I should always be EQing this. I was worried about giving free turns to Ogerpon, but that also just doesn't matter in this spot. Rocks was just a throw here. Honestly, I didn't really know what I was thinking about that. I guess it helps in a situation where I have to water move this and then gunk shot after. It opens up a calc without the Protean type. I don't know. Either way, they go for it and I flinch. So, I mean, I don't reveal my terrible play until after the fact, which is nice. You get in the video, not the battle. And this Pokemon is now in range of Ivy Cudgel, which is super, super nice. I do go Greninja, though, because of the fact that it's Iron Head. I actually do get a free click here to go for the Dark Pulse into my opponent's team. And now at this point, Gunk Shot should always kill, no matter what, even through the Kebia Berry, which they reveal to be. So that's always killing there, and we were able to get into a really interesting situation. They go into Choice Scarf Excadrill. The question here is, what do you lock into? I think the play is to always lock Earthquake at this junction of the game. And the reason, and because of that reason, I actually decided to go Raging Bolt, which seems a little counterintuitive. You think, well, if you lock Earthquake, you just go Ogerpon. But I'm pretty sure there's a decent amount of rolls that Ogerpon gets to a KO out here from Adamant Choice Scarf, because this is what that set has to be at this point. If I sack the Raging Bolt here, I get my Ogerpon in for free, I get a Synthesis up, and I can just click Ivy Cudgel. The reason Ivy Cudgel is super powerful at this spot is, if they want a U-turn for damage, if that's their best way to deal damage, they go into Excadrill, they catch an Ivy Cudgel, and this thing's gone, and then I revenge kill with the Greninja. Is mainly the line I'm thinking. If they just stay in an attack, then I can synth up. There's a lot of other options I have. So I go to Raging Bolt to sacrifice this off and open up that end game with Ogerpon clicking the synthing up on the Excadrill and then spamming Ivy Cudgel. They elect to go for X-Scissor, so maybe their calc wasn't the same on this Ogerpon and they didn't think they could 2-hit KO with Earthquake. But this simplifies the end game tenfold for me, because now they can't stand because they're Choice Scarfed, and I'm able to just get off a really powerful Volt Switch here and get my Greninja in. And now at this point, they're just, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. You don't know if I have Ice Beam or not yet. I haven't revealed Surf. So, Water Move is obviously one of the slots. I haven't revealed Spikes, and I'm Protean, so you probably think I have Ice Beam here. I just go for the Gunk Shot to guarantee my kill, and at this point my opponent's in the same position, but they have to lock into a move, and I'm able to just go to Raging Bolt again. They have to lock into Earthquake, and now Ivy Cudgel kills from this point. I synth up as a troll, but I mean, this is just a dumb thing to do. But as you can see here with the calcs, like Earthquake was killing here. 2 Earthquakes was killing here, and that's why I think they should have Earthquaked in that spot. It was just always killing Ogerpon here from this spot. I mean, I guess if they get 2 low rolls, it's whatever, but I don't know. At the end of the day, I mean, I should have just Ivy Cudgel there. That was just BM to synth up. But at the end of the day, we go 5-1 after winning another big week in the JJDL, and we're doing well. We're going on strong as a team. As I said, if we get first place in the team standings at the end of the 9 weeks, then we make it automatically to the team finals, which is super important. And if you win the team finals, everyone from your team makes individual playoffs, and then from there it goes half, 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 I think, something like that. So we really want to prioritize making the team finals to maximize everyone on our team's chances of playing in the individual playoffs. So that is the end of JJDL, almost at BBR, JJDL week number 4 to 6. Unfortunate for Terapagos. I think it's Pokemon, kind of a fraud, but it is what it is. Thank you everyone for watching. If you got this far and enjoyed the video, been enjoying the JDDL videos, been enjoying the post-commentary draft league, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The channel, as I said, we've been doing great things the last couple of weeks in terms of, I think, my play, the content I produce, and you guys seem to be very receptive to it. So really appreciate all of that. We've got a lot of post-com showdown coming over the next couple of weeks as we get into the next draft league. As I said, BBR ends, we got the Scramble tournament, but we got a lot of showdown coming up, which is going to be super exciting. A lot of old gens. I love me some old gens, so stay tuned for that. But I'll see you guys in the next video, and as always, have a wonderful day.